But if you like the programs that have you track to stay on track, there's a new one out called Move, Lose, or Maintain. And the weigh-ins for that are occurring right now. That program is meant to piggyback on Active U Autumn. So if you like the Active U Autumn and you like the exercise tracking, Move, Lose, Maintain is another way to kind of keep that going through the holidays. It officially begins November 17th and runs through January 10th. And what you got to do is you just got to get your height and weight checked at the beginning and at the end. And if you maintain your weight or lose weight over the holidays, you can keep your $20 donation, or you don't have to donate the $20, or you can choose to donate it anyway. But if you move and lose, you don't have to unless you want to. And so it's a great way to kind of keep that momentum going. If you're really enjoying the tracking and the Active U Autumn, it's a great way to kind of keep the momentum going, especially over the holidays and the colder, darker days that we have coming up. All right, you see the typical information that I usually tell you at the beginning of every session. Any questions, contact your personal health coach, or of course feel free to email me after we're finished for today. So today's presentation I really like, because it's near and dear to my heart. I relate to this one a lot. It's a lot of what I hear when I do individual consultations. It's a lot that I've come across in my life, and it's dealing with not being motivated. So we have Joe's story, and I totally related to Joe because he reminded me of so many, particularly of the men in my life. He's a single man. He was telling me he didn't want to go to his annual exam, but a lot of people in his life were on him. He's 35. He should have a baseline. He heard all this information, blah, blah, blah. So finally he goes, but it was begrudgingly, trust me. So he gets the physical, and his doctor says, okay, I need to see you back. I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks or whatever to discuss some results. So when he goes back in, the doctor says, hey, you know what, your body mass index, which is your height to weight ratio, is now considered to be in the obese range, so it's something we have to pay attention to. And his blood work came back that he has high cholesterol. So, the helpful doctor suggestion of lose some weight, and he kind of prefaced it as, you know what, losing weight will help with both of these things, or we might have to consider medication. And Joe is, not real happy with that information. He told his doctor, you know what, I'm not that concerned about it. I'm not that motivated to eat healthily. I don't really care. That's not what I'm interested in doing right now. He really didn't think that these things were that big of a problem. So he told me, I just had the health summary. I had the information. I just chucked it in the garbage as I left the doctor's office. Well, then, to piggyback on that, he went to his first softball game of the season, and he remembers putting on his pants and thinking to himself, oh my God, these totally shrunk in the wash, or I must have washed them in hot water, or whatever. He was still in that mindset of there's nothing wrong, there's whatever, I'm fine. And so the softball game didn't go that well either. And he kept thinking, oh, it's the heat that's making me feel so out of breath. He strikes out, and whatever. It was just a bad game. Got over it. But on the way home, he said, as was his usual, stops for fast food, and then he goes home. And, he really hates grocery shopping. He doesn't really like to cook, so he really did eat, fast food quite a bit. Most of his meals, I would say most of his dinners for sure. So he showers, eats, sits down in front of the computer. There's always some new phone coming out, and I forget which iPhone this was, but it must have been a couple years ago, so it was probably the 4 or the 5. And everyone at the office had one, and you really wanted one, but, of course, when they first come out, they're very expensive. And he just felt like I can never seem to get enough money to save up to get a new one. So he's frustrated, and his typical go-to in the evening is to grab a beer, some chips, and sit in front of the TV. And he notices, too, one more thing that is getting more expensive is all the cables, all the packages, all the programs that he wants are on channels, but it's too expensive to kind of have everything that he wants. So some of the things we were able to pinpoint, after meeting with him a few times and getting his story, and trust me, this, this took time. This wasn't like one visit he told us all this stuff. This was, kind of an ongoing reminiscence. So it took him a while to kind of figure out the three things that we were able to pinpoint. Was the big one was he wasn't concerned about his weight or his eating or his exercise. He was just like, I'm fine. I can do what I want to do. I'm good to go. He really didn't pay attention to physical symptoms or his test results or his physician advice. He just had it in his head, I'm fine, I'm good, we're going to keep going as is. And he definitely was not mindful of his food or beverage choices. Really, when we asked him to start tracking that, it was pretty alarming to him to see what was going on there. So when we kind of started addressing the not being concerned about the weight, eating, or exercise strategies that were a little tough, I have to say this one was not that easy to get him to do, was becoming aware of those thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that trigger behaviors. Most people that we come across say, I know I should eat healthily, I know losing weight and exercising would help me, but I'm not motivated to do it. It's like that sticking point of knowledge to action, like how do you bridge that gap? But we had to have him back up even more and say, well, are you aware of, how you do feel? Do you feel like you have energy? Do you feel like you can do things? Are you comfortable in your own skin? And what is it that you truly want? And what motivates you? I think I'm getting ready to reboot here. Oh, no. Okay. So it's really paying attention to what is it you want, how are you feeling, and what truly motivates you. And for some people, it's external motivators, and some people, it's internal motivators. And you can see, with Joe's story, money, I think, seems to be a bigger motivator for him because he wants to be able to get things and to be able to afford things, and how can he go about that. But the other thing is acceptance of yourself as you are. Now, that's not to be mistaken for complacency where you're not willing to do anything, but you kind of really have to accept your reality to be able to move forward. There's no one right or wrong way to feel, but you have to kind of take a good hard look and be like, okay, this is what's going on, this is what I'm up against. And you have to really be very honest with yourself of what's realistic, what can you do. We hear a lot of when it's warmer, or when this project's done, or when this job is over. And there never seems to be a perfect time for change. And so many people are also running into caring for aging parents or loved ones or family members. There's always some level of crises in our own lives, whether it's an injury or illness or whatever. So it is doing the best you can with whatever that situation, whatever presents itself. But in Joe's case, he really started to pay attention how he truly felt. And you know what? He's not motivated to eat healthily and exercise. He is frustrated that his pants don't fit. He is frustrated that he becomes breathless while playing softball. He is frustrated that he couldn't afford, the new iPhone or that higher level cable package. But it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice everything in your life. You just have to take a step back and become more objective about, okay, what is it that I want? How am I feeling about this? And what can I do about it? A lot of our weight management and ready-to-lose students say, you know what, I don't care about this because I love to eat too much, or I don't want to go without things that I love. And you can still fit a lot of this stuff in around making healthier choices, but it's all about the balance, and you have to be willing to change, because if you were where you were happy or where you wanted to be, you could keep doing what you're doing. But if you keep doing what you're doing, you can't expect change unless you're someone who's fortunate enough to already have positive change going on. So it's really taking that good hard look and accepting yourself and being really honest of here's where I'm at, where do I want to go with this. Another thing we see a lot is ignoring physical symptoms, ignoring the test results and the physician advice. And it may be one, it may be all, maybe you can relate to this on some level. I personally ignored physical symptoms and then fast forward a few months, end up with a back surgery because I didn't do the things I should have done. And I kind of knew it, but I really played the wait and see game. Physician advice is hard because when they just tell you to lose weight, but they don't give you the tools to do so, it can be frustrating. And then I would say that inner 3-year-old stomps its feet and has a temper tantrum, and I'm not doing it. But in Joe's case, you know what? He told the doctor flat out, I don't want to do it. And so the doctor asked him, what is important to you? We asked him, what is important to you? And so when he said, you know what, getting that new phone is important to me. So we had to brainstorm them. We had to say, okay, that's your reality. What are we going to do about it? So aligning your goals with what you truly want. You want that new iPhone. You have the financial concern. Where are you spending a lot of money? So when he sat down and tracked how many times he was going out to eat and how much he spent, I think it was really eye-opening for Joe in particular to see where his dollars were going and where could he make some positive change. So even reducing eating fast food to 3 times per week saved him a lot of money. I mean, more than he thought possible. He still didn't value a healthy lifestyle at this point in time, but he was learning to become more aware of, you know, what choices, what does motivate him, how can he make more conscious choices about his own life. And you know what? He had to weigh several options. He had to try a lot of different ways to behave. He didn't want to do it, but he could see the value in it. He had that extrinsic, that external motivation of, I see the dollar sign when I go to the fast food. I know that if I don't go to dinner that day, I can save X amount of dollars. So for him, that was the big motivator. It may or may not be different for each and every one of you. The other big thing that we really pulled out, especially with him dining out so much and fast food as the major source of his intake, was mindfulness of the food and beverage choices. For this, we had to have him employ that strategy number 3. We had to have him learn more about that. We had to have him track and pay attention and see how many calories he was eating. We had to kind of educate him on how many calories do you need? Where do you want to go with this? Where can you cut back? Where are you willing to make change? You know, he always loved how having chips and beer at the end of his day made him feel relaxed. He says, you know, he always took the path of least resistance, and that was why he ended up going to fast food so much for dinner. It was super easy. He didn't have to put any thought into it other than, where should I go? So he really had to put a big effort into this one because, you know, this was a guy that hardly ever made meals at home. He started with, you know, he worked his way towards the meal planning websites and healthy meals in 20 minutes, like the easier cooking, but he kind of had to start with more packaged foods and more things that are prepared in the store but healthier, kind of broadening his horizons, his vegetable horizons, I should say. Never really consumed that many of them, so it was kind of an experiment. Boy, this was a long process, I'm not going to lie to you. This was a challenge, but he really, I think once he learned a little bit more, saw the importance of it. And then, you know, we had to have conversations about balancing that pleasure and nourishment. You can still have fast food, just be aware of what you're choosing and how frequently you are going there. Be aware of if you have the whole Whopper meal or the double Whopper and a large, big king-size Coke, how many calories you're putting in. So it's not so much of eliminating a whole day of fast food, but also being aware of, can you have a smaller portion of it? Can you limit yourself to one beer and a little bit of a bowl of chips versus grabbing the bag and going back for more. So becoming more mindful and deliberate about food choices versus choosing what's easy by default. So Joe really kind of discovered his own motivation with that. So when we fast forward, 1 year later, begrudgingly goes to that annual follow-up appointment. Didn't want to go. Still, in the obese category, but better than it was. Still recommended to lose some weight or, may have to start taking cholesterol medication. And so he starts thinking about that. All right, I'm doing these things, or I'm going to start doing these things. And you have to pay attention. You know what? It's good to know yourself. And you have to know that once your weight gets to a certain point or you have other complications, you really need to start paying attention of health versus just that number on the scale. That's when the things you can't see, like your blood pressure and your cholesterol, and those things get really important. Yeah, we all want to lose weight and fit into those pants, but what else is going on? Joe didn't have any blood sugar issues or blood pressure issues. It was cholesterol. And cholesterol, he found out is, immediately impacted by your physical activity level. And so is blood pressure. And then he does acknowledge to his doctor, he's motivated to save money. He wants the new iPhone. And so he brainstormed with his doctor and with us, and here it says just the doctor, but you know what? He found out how many dollars he was spending on food. He found a way to make it work. He was definitely more interested in eating healthfully once he realized where this was going. This trend was not a way that he wanted to go. He was willing to eat out only 3 times a week, and that was great. That was a huge change from, every day. And, we had to convince him that planning and cooking meals at home wasn't as horrible. We had to start him on baby steps. Like I said, he started with some packaged stuff. And, he decided to get extra softball practices in and to get more exercise in. He started looking up recipes. He started making chili. He found he could add fiber and make things more healthily. He also started purchasing the small bags of chips versus one big bag. It was a little bit more expensive, but he found he ate less if he had them prepackaged versus serving them himself. So he found a lot of ways to kind of work around his own challenges. So a lot of what he did was he had to accept that he's not particularly concerned or motivated by healthy lifestyle choices. So he had to find a way that motivated him, and he had to kind of figure it out in his own terms or in his own way. There's no one right way that works for everybody. He became more aware of, where could he save money? He wanted that new phone. How could he plan on spending less money? And he chose less dining out, cutting back on fast food, cutting back on the chips and beer at home. Started planning to prepare some quick dinners, and then chili was great because, you know what, some could go in the freezer, some could go for lunch. So you really saw this paying off in the long run. It took a while, but it really worked. So for Joe's motivation, the strategies we used were you had to become aware of the thoughts, feelings. If you pay attention, you put that pause in, more mindful, what triggers you? Are you emotional and that causes you to eat? What's going on there? And you really have to have some level of self-acceptance. You kind of got to really be honest with yourself of, here's where I'm at now. Where do I want to be? Now, we all have I call it the I used to in our head, like I used to be able to do this, or I used to be able to go and do that, or I used to be able to wear that. And it's okay to acknowledge that person, but you really have to kind of start where you are. And maybe that's where you want to get back to. But if you're not that person now, you kind of have to accept, here's where I am. What am I going to do about it? And what's your reality? What's going on in your life? Are your goals unrealistic for the situation such as it is? Do you need to be a little more flexible with yourself, or are you already too flexible with yourself? So every person's a little bit different, and that's where you got to sit down and think about what your goals are. If you want to lose weight, that's great, but what steps are you going to take to make that happen? If that's what you truly want, what are you going to do to get there? And you may have to try several options. You may have to learn to behave in a new way, or in a, behave in a particular situation. And if it's something that you need to learn more about, use your personal health coach. Tap into our expertise. We can help you out with that. And of course, you want to have that balance between pleasure and nourishment. You want to feel like your needs are being met, but you also want to have maybe things that are very pleasurable but not so healthy for you. So it's like, how can that fit in your big picture? So many times we're all or nothing. We think, oh no, we have to do this just as it is, or it's not going to work. And it's more finding that lifelong balance. And it takes a process. It's not going to fix itself automatically. But you have to, again, really think about, what is it you truly want? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do? Because that's the bottom line, is you have to be willing to do something to create change. So in Joe's case, one of the first things he did on his action plan was being mindful of the food and beverage choices. He had no clue how many calories he was putting in. He had no clue about how much he was spending when he was going out. So he really had to take time and learn a little bit more about it. One of the strategies he did try was he found some quick meal ideas on the internet that his doctor recommended. They talked about that a little bit. He noticed money. He was really motivated by those dollars. And if you find something that works for you, like money did for Joe, or wanting that new phone, that's great. But we try to tell people, try not to have food as your reward system. Oops, try to pick something else. So, and the other thing that happened when he tried different things, he found some new foods he liked. He found that some things were easy to prepare, where before it never even crossed his mind to do these things. So he did realize he had to get to the grocery store more regularly to have the things at home, and that wasn't that big of a problem to him after he got used to it. But I was going to say, yeah, he didn't really particularly enjoy it at first. So motivation is a tricky beast, and we hear a lot, oh, I don't have any motivation. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. So some of the questions we tell people to ask themselves is, you know what? What would your future look like if you don't make any changes? How will it be different if you do? So maybe sitting and thinking about what's important to you. For me personally, what changed is not so much physical, but ability-wise. I was seeing myself physically decline in what I was able to do, and especially once I had my son and he got older, not being able to sit on the floor comfortably and play a game with him, or not being able to chase him around the yard because my back hurt so bad I couldn't run. So if I didn't do something about it, I did not like the way that felt down the road. Would I be able to exercise with him when he gets older? Would I be able to show him things athletic-wise that I want to be able to show him? So think about that for yourself, of if things don't change, what will your future look like? And then you got to back up and maybe set up some small goals along the way. What are the steps you're going to use or do to meet those larger goals? If losing 10 pounds is your goal, you still have to break that down into steps. What are you going to do to get there? And the other thing is pay attention. Pay attention to your reasons. Why do you want to change? Keep them handy. We know in our head what we want, but we get busy and we get this and we get stressed and we forget about it. So write them down and look at them every once in a while. Write down your reasons, and they may change. If you have a bunch of things that I would call common excuses that you use when you're tempted to make an unhealthy decision, write it down, vocalize it, talk about it, think about it, and maybe write down what some positive responses to that would be. The one I hear the most is, I don't have time. So I make people dig a little bit deeper. Why don't you have time? What exactly is going on? Because not saying you don't have time is pretty generic, and it could possibly be true, but see where things are going on your priority list. And we talk about this all the time of where are you and where is your health on your priority list. And that sometimes is a real eye-opener for people. And try writing down a positive response to your common excuse. No time. I don't set time aside for myself. You make appointments for everything else. Make an appointment for yourself. That's just an example. And what skills do you have to be successful? Do you have great skills in time management? Do you have great skills in food prep? Do you know how to create an effective exercise plan? What skills do you already possess that you can build on? If you don't have those skills, can someone help you with that? So reach out again to your personal health coach here at I'm Healthy. That's what we're here for. So I'm at 12:26. Sorry I talked your ear off today and didn't get any input from any of you. Lots of food for thought for today, but the big question, what would your future look like if you don't make any changes? And what are you willing to do about it? So you don't have to type anything in, but those are just a couple of things I want you to reflect on. If you do need to sign off, feel free to do so. I'm going to hang out here for another few minutes if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, thank you for joining me, and I will see you all next week.